Hello and welcome to the Emmy Awards. I'm your host, Emmy Cardinale, and this is my podcast where I talk about what I've been watching or rewatching once a week. If this is the first episode of mine that you stumble upon, please feel free to follow me wherever you listen to podcasts. Like and subscribe if you're listening to this on YouTube. Specifically, if you are watching Big Brother 27 and you want to hear somebody's thoughts on it, I will be covering that for the rest of the summer. I also cover a wide range of television, so if Big Brother 27 isn't your cup of tea, but you somehow stumbled upon this, please feel free to check out any other episodes that I have, because I have quite a range of shows that I talk about, but right now I am covering Big Brother 27. Disclaimers before I get started on my recap of week 2 of Big Brother 27. I am one person. This is a one-woman show, and this podcast is a hobby. And because of the nature of live feeds and the lack of rewind or flashback, I am not able to gather everything. So I'm doing my best to gather stuff and watch as much feeds as I can. Obviously, I watch the episodes, I take notes, I try to gather the most important things, but I am one person. So if I miss something or I say something incorrect, please feel free to correct me, let me know. I'm doing the best I can to recap the week in both a comprehensive but also abridged way. I said last week, but my goal for this podcast, along with sharing my thoughts on gameplay, because I'm not just like purely recapping, I'm obviously going to share my thoughts on how I feel about the players, their game, etc., etc. But what I aim to do with this podcast is kind of like not as detailed as people who do daily live feed updates, but maybe a little bit more in depth than people who just recap the show. Also, my thoughts. I'm sure that there are other people who also do similar things. I'm not trying to act like I am unique in my coverage. Anyways, I feel like sometimes Big Brother podcasts, like, they only talk about the episodes. I want to talk about what happens on feeds, but I don't have the time to do like a recap every day. I have a full-time job. This is just a hobby. Don't even make any money from it. Genuinely, it's just for the love of the game. So those are my disclaimers. I'm doing my best. Also, I try to be fair and like reasonable with my critiques of the players. If you ever feel like I take things too far or I'm like, please correct me. I'm not afraid to be called out. That being said, I won't always give a shit about your opinion, respectfully. Like, if you disagree with me not liking Zay because he said a slur, then I just don't care. I don't care about your opinion. But yeah, those are just some annoying disclaimers before I get out of the way. Maybe if I have time at the end, but probably not. Actually, you know what? Let me do this really quickly. And there will be timestamps in the description, so if you don't care about this, feel free to skip straight to the Big Brother part. But I want to talk very, very briefly, okay? Because I don't have the energy to, and I already anticipate this episode. Like, I'm covering the entire week of Big Brother. And last week I covered the week, but I had already talked for like 40 minutes in an earlier episode that same week about like half of the Big Brother week. So I anticipate this episode, like the Big Brother portion, being a decent length. So not to like make this podcast longer than it needs to be, but I do want to very briefly talk about The Summer I Turned Pretty, because I just watched all 3 episodes today and it's like fresh in my brain. Maybe I will, it's so crazy isn't the right word, but like I really wanted to do a couple years ago when The Summer I Turned Pretty, I think it was it season 2 was airing? I don't know if I had my podcast for season 1, because I think it was when season 2 was airing. Anyways, in 2023, when the writer's strike was happening and then the SAG strike happened, I pivoted. It was 2023 because it coincided very conveniently with Big Brother 25, which was the first season of Big Brother that I covered on this podcast, because I started the podcast in 2022. Anyways, sorry, going through my memories. So when SAG was on strike, I stopped covering scripted television because actors and writers weren't allowed to talk about their work. And while this is not like a commercial, like I don't make any money from it, so it's not like I would be particularly filling a void. I just didn't want in any way risk filling a void or crossing any kind of picket line. So I just didn't talk about shows that weren't being, that the people couldn't promote. And The Summer I Turned Pretty was one of those shows, so I didn't end up recapping it, even though I had a lot to say, or honestly covering it at all. So I've never talked about The Summer I Turned Pretty on this podcast because of the timing of it all. But that being said, I have been Team Conrad since season 1. I understood the Jeremiah Peel-ish season 1. Like, I get it on paper. I think for me, and I will say, it's not always like a one-size-fits-all, because I've seen people who, like, for example, My Life with the Walter Boys on Netflix, which people compare to The Summer I Turned Pretty all the time because there's a love triangle with brothers. I actually don't like the one that, like, I don't like the brother that people compare to Conrad. I don't know. So it's not like necessarily for, like, there's just, I don't know. I didn't vibe with Jeremiah. I liked Conrad. It felt very much like he was going through something. I have a lot of empathy for people who are maybe not their best selves in a relationship because they're clearly struggling, and not because, like, I don't know. I liked Conrad from the beginning, and all that being said, I'm really enjoying season 3. I loved season 2. I really like the show. I really do enjoy the show. I don't understand Team Jeremiah. Like, I didn't okay, because here's the thing. Season 1, she's known both of them her whole life. I get it. I get the whole, like, whatever. I don't understand. And even, like, okay, she kisses Jeremiah, but she's always liked Conrad, and then she and Conrad, like, whatever. I don't understand. Like, there's a boundary for me where it's like, I understand somewhat, like, pursuing. Actually, I don't understand it, but it's just very, very bizarre to, like, get into a long-term relationship with your brother's ex-girlfriend. I don't care that you've all known each other for, like, the same amount of time. Like, that's weird to me. Like, Jeremiah is a very odd individual. To quote Amaya Papaya, I do not like Jeremiah. Like, that's just odd. I also just don't feel, I don't know. I mean, I just don't think that they're compatible. I don't think that they are meant to be. He bothers me as a character. So it's been a rough season in terms of, like, there's a lot of Jeremiah and Belly. I'm hoping that it'll take a turn. I really need it to to turn around. But I'm really enjoying the season so far. I just needed to vent for a second about how much I don't like Jeremiah. Anyways, Team Conrad. I feel like, okay, because I was Team Jess in Gilmore Girls, so I feel like there's, like, maybe some kind of, like, it would appear that I have some kind of, like, bias towards, like, the broody old, and for me, it's like, it's not even about that, because, for example, as much as I love Jess, I really like Jess because he's one of my favorite characters, and, like, I love a good story where it's like, it never works out, like, the connection is real, because I just think there's something very beautiful and romantic and tragic about a love story that's, like, complicated and tense, and it, like, doesn't end because and either person particularly, like, stops loving the person, or anybody particularly wrongs the other person. It's just like I don't know, there's something to me that I really resonate with that, and I like, I don't know, I really like their dynamic. I also think there's something to be said about, like, I started watching Gilmore Girls when I was in high school, and so I think I just connected more to, like, that era of Rory's life, where I do think maybe if I started watching later, I mean, I would never be Team Dean. I think in the Logan Dean, when Rory, like, or even Jess and Dean always loses for me, okay? I liked Rory and Logan. I think there's just, Jess was, anyways, so, like, I would just like to clarify, okay, that I don't have, like, a type for, like, there's just something about, like, I understood, I wasn't particularly Team Jeremiah or Team Conrad season 1. I leaned more towards Conrad because it just felt very much like I could tell, like, there was like a history and a weight there in terms of, like, the romantic connection they had with each other that I didn't feel from Jeremiah. Like, Jeremiah's attraction to Belly felt very surface level, and you know what? My opinion in that regard hasn't changed. Like, I think Jeremiah is very much like, the people who are Team Jeremiah are like, he's very like, he's nice to her. And yes, he is. But I think there's a difference between being nice to somebody and, like, being good for somebody or compatible. And I just don't think Jeremiah and Belly are compatible. Like, the way Belly views romance and love, I do not think is compatible with the way that Jeremiah approaches relationships. Conrad literally hasn't been with anybody since Belly because of how deeply he loved her. Like, that's the kind of love that Belly so clearly craves, and I just don't think that's Jeremiah. And I also want to say, as somebody who graduated a semester late, it's kind of flop loser behavior that, like, you wouldn't know until you went to get your graduation robe. Like, that's, like, maybe it's bad writing. Like, it's either bad writing or he's just a very, very dumb student, because as somebody, again, who, like, and I was technically, it wasn't like a thing where, like, when I was a senior, I did my senior thesis a year before I graduated, like, the fall. I had 2 senior falls. So I did my senior thesis in English the fall of 2020. And I was like, I was supposed to graduate in spring of 2021. I knew when I was doing my thesis that I would have to be there another semester, because I already knew that I wasn't going to have enough credits to graduate in the next semester. Again, because I was on top of my shit. But, like, I was still a senior. But then, like, literally a few months before the spring semester in 2021 ended, they were like, you need to register for classes because, like, you're not, like, it was a few months before, because I needed to register for classes. I went to a small college, and it was actually not super common for people to graduate halfway through a school year, like, to take an extra semester or to take a semester off and then come back. But when the pandemic hit, a lot of people took semesters off because of, I went to a residential college, and, like, not to be all convoluted, but, like, you lived on campus all 4 years, but because of COVID, people didn't have roommates, and, like, for social distancing and, like, to reduce the spread and everything, everybody had a single. Like, the fall of 2020, nobody, like, you couldn't have a roommate, and so by nature of that, like, not everybody was on campus, so some people took the semester off because they didn't want to do college remotely. Anyways, more people were graduating a semester late, so they had a lot more help with that than normal, because it was, like, common. So it was like, if you were graduating, like, registration was separated as, like, if you were graduating in December of 2021, you registered before people graduating in spring of 2022, even though, you know what I mean? So, like, anyways, all that being said, it's like, you would know. I mean, it's also really, really stupid that you wouldn't know that your core classes changed. Maybe I just had a very active advisor, but I'm like, I knew what parts of my, like, every time before registration, I would meet with my advisor, and it'd be like, okay, you still need to meet this requirement for your major, or, like, you've met all the requirements for your major, but you still need this because I went to a liberal arts school, so I had to take, like, certain diversification credits. So then I would, like, that's just stupid to me. Anyways, there's nothing wrong with graduating a semester late. The bad part is that he, with no knowledge, was suddenly like, oh, I'm graduating late. I went to pick up my cap and gown. Like, at that point, anyways, sorry for that mini tangent. On to Big Brother 27 week 2. So on Thursday, the 17th of July, after the election, so Thursday, July 17th, after the eviction, I wrote election in my notes. That's so embarrassing. Before Feeds came back, so Zay went home. Feeds didn't come back until after the HOH. So based off of what we saw in the episode, Sunday's episode, the HOH episode. So again, this wasn't on Feed, so I don't know how detailed it is, but based off of what we saw in the episode of what happened after the eviction, people were trying to figure out who voted for Zay to go and who voted for Amy. And they're very much, I think it's meant narratively, it was meant somewhat narratively to set up who Jimmy would nominate, like who was against him in the vote, etc. But also just, like, you know, that's always a conversation. Jimmy, in Sunday's episode, says that he hopes whoever HOH is somebody on their side, somebody who voted with the 9 to evict Zay. Will and Keanu are trying to figure out the votes, and they think all the boys voted for Amy. But Keanu swears that Kelly promised him that, like, he swears that Kelly voted for Amy to go. But Will's like, that wouldn't make sense because I'm the 5th. Because they assume that all the boys voted with them. Riley did not. They don't know that Riley didn't. So the votes are like, they don't know who voted for who, right? Okay. Keanu basically doesn't believe that Will voted for Amy to go. He thinks that he turned because he doesn't think Kelly was the one to turn. Kelly tells Keanu that she voted with them, so he's really at this point doubting Will. So Will's name is coming up specifically out of Keanu's mouth. Riley lies about voting for Amy to stay, so Keanu at this point is sure that it's Will. Adrian and Ava and Will are in a conversation, and Adrian tells Keanu. Adrian was in the room when Riley lied about voting for Amy. So Ava, Adrian, and Will are in a conversation. Adria tells them that Keanu thinks that Will switched his vote. So Will then asks Kelly, and Kelly's like, yes, Keanu does think that you are lying about your vote. So there's like tension, right, with Will, Keanu, etc., etc. Honestly, now that the whole week has played out, I don't really know how consequential that really was, but it was something that happened before the HOH competition that we didn't see on feeds, but we saw kind of condensed into the episode. So I wrote it down, but I don't really know how important it is, to be quite honest. Anyways, Adrian tells Will to keep his cool so he doesn't make himself a target. Zach doesn't trust Keanu because Adrian debriefs of the situation, and he's like, Keanu's stirring the pot. Obviously, Will voted with us. There's a lot of tension of like the votes and what that means for the dynamics and who people trust and like who people think, certain people think that other people are lying to them, and that's obviously causing tension in the house. The HOH competition is like in the dark, and they have to find like pieces, and there's obviously a key that locks in the HOH, but there are also 3 different like pieces that lock in powers. Keanu gets a power first. He locks that in. Then Jimmy locks in the HOH. Okay, also, this is not relevant to the game, but it was funny, and I love her. Ava is... It's not funny that she's afraid of the dark, but Ava's like really afraid of the dark. So she just sat down at some point. She tried, but she was like, I'm not going to do it, and she sat down. I love that. That made me so happy. I love her. Like, I think it's so interesting how so much changes week to week. Not like entirely. Like, very rarely are there people who I like despise. I mean, not that there are people who I despise, but like very rarely are there people who I like really don't vibe with their personality that they end up growing on me. There are people who I'm indifferent towards or I don't like who end up growing on me. But like honestly, if I get a bad vibe about somebody, because I really try not to judge them, most of the time I am indifferent. If I have a bad vibe about somebody, it's hard for that to change. But like it's so funny to me how, because even in my first episode, like when I was like Big Brother's back, it's so funny how my opinions and like how strongly I feel towards certain contestants has changed, because Ava was somebody who I liked as like a TV personality, but I wasn't super sure about her game. And 2 weeks in, I am really loving her game. I think her social game is so good. Like nobody's worried about targeting her. She's in a very good spot right now. She's also really likable. I think she's smart with the game where she doesn't take things too personally, or like she bounces back well. Not that she's been like targeted, but I just think like she gets frustrated with people, or like she has her opinions about things, but she does a good job of like communicating or like not making people like, she doesn't like, things don't escalate with Ava. Even when she's upset, like it's like I don't know, like she is really good with the players in the game, and I'm really rooting for Ava. Super not relevant to the outcome of the HOH, but it was just a moment where I was like, I love her. I love Ava. She's definitely somebody that I'm really, really rooting for. And if she doesn't win, I will likely be voting for her for America's favorite player. I do anticipate her at least making it to jury. I think it would be so crazy if she didn't make it to jury. I mean, I don't want to like jinx her, but I love her. I'm obsessed with Ava. Like, not just as somebody I'm watching on TV, but like her gameplay and her position in the game is slowly like really, really, like I'm really enjoying watching her in the game as well, not just like her personality. Like there are people who like Like, Lauren, I think, is so sweet, and I really like her personality, and, like, I will be following her because, like, I feel like we have a lot in common. Game-wise, I don't totally know if I love her reads and, like, her approach to things yet. I don't hate it. It's not like she's making decisions that I'm like, that's stupid. But I'm not, like, I don't know if I particularly at this point in time. Ava, I knew I liked her from the beginning, but slowly I'm really beginning to like her as a player. Lauren, I like as a player. I'm just more, like, Ava's in such a good spot right now. I'm really, really rooting for her. Anyways, sorry that I went on a tangent. So Jimmy got the HOH, Mickey gets a power, and Kelly gets the last power. And Jimmy helps her, like, put it into the slot so he knows that she has a power, which was a really great game move. Jimmy, in his trying to nominate people, is really trying to figure out who has the powers. Feeds came back. He had one HOH. He was trying to figure out who had the powers. Keanu was a target early on because he doesn't like Keanu. They still had beef from the previous week. Kelly volunteered to be a pawn because she sucks at the game. I'm sorry, she just does. It's fine. We found out in Sunday's episode, Keanu's power was that he got like an extra chance at the veto, basically. So a former Big Brother house guest was going to come and play alongside him, which meant that like he had 2 chances to win the veto. Kelly's power is that she can play an extra veto. Like, she can win an extra veto, but she has to, like, how, if you watch Big Brother 26, Leah got the janky veto. She had to do a competition to earn the janky veto. It's kind of like that. Like, she would have an extra competition that only she would play in, and if she won, she got the veto. If she didn't, she didn't get the veto. So that was Kelly's power. So basically 2 vetoes in play, and then Mickey's power is kind of like Quinn's deepfake HOH. She gets to take over the HOH. The difference is that it's like the interrogation. So whoever is the HOH that she hijacks their HOH reign, they get to interrogate everybody in the house. And then if they guess correctly who took over the HOH, then they keep their HOH. So that's basically where she stands. She did tell Morgan, but that was the only person that I think she has told. If she told somebody else, I missed that. I only saw her tell Morgan. Keanu and Kelly tell each other that they have powers. Kelly tells Jimmy that Keanu knows she has power. Jimmy thinks it's suspicious that she told Keanu, and he suspects Keanu has power too. He does talk in the DR about like wanting to flush the powers, which I think is an interesting thing to note because I feel like before the episode aired, because basically Jimmy won HOH on Thursday night, then Friday he nominated people, and then Saturday the veto was played, and so by the time the HOH episode even aired, we already know who had the veto and stuff, so it was like kind of interesting to watch the episode and then be like, why is he nominating people who have powers? But he didn't want to flush them, so I don't know. It's like, I'm sure it was like good and bad. Maybe I don't want to speak for Jimmy. Anyways, so Jimmy throughout the week kept saying that he wanted a clean week. And I have to say, I feel like, and maybe this is stupid, but this is the Emmy Awards official advice for anybody playing Big Brother. Shift your perspective, okay? Hope for the best, but like prepare for the worst. Like, maybe go into your week being like, I'm going to do the best I can with the circumstances given to me. Like, don't say you want a calm, easy week. Say that you will make the most. Be like, whatever happens, at least I'm safe for the week. I earn myself safety. I'm going to do my best to utilize this week to not make any new enemies, to move my game further along. Like, maybe shift the perspective instead of saying you want a calm, easy week. And instead say that you're going to make the most of whatever. I don't know. That's just my advice. I feel like anytime somebody says they want an easy week, or like this person's a pawn, I'm like, don't put things like that out there. Okay, just say that you're going to do the best with what you got. That's my advice. It's my official advice here at the Emmy Awards. Jimmy's pawn options are Adrian, Lauren, and Riley because he doesn't think they'll get any votes to leave. He says it's to Adrian. He ends up nominating Kelly, Adrian, and Keanu. He, in his speech, says to Kelly that he was worried that she changed the noms. tells Adrian that he's 100% a pawn. Keanu is his target. Adrian really wants to win for his mom. There's a really beautiful segment in one of the episodes. I cannot remember which one. I think it was Wednesday's veto episode. I don't really know, but maybe it was Sunday's episode. It really doesn't matter. Also, throughout like the time, there's a lot of this isn't super new, so I don't have an exact date that this happened. But like Kelly and Keanu each individually kind of rub people the wrong way in certain moments, which obviously doesn't help their target, them being a target. I mean, I think even if Keanu, maybe if he was super popular, Jimmy wouldn't nominate him. But like his popularity didn't super impact the reason that Jimmy nominated Keanu, because they just like were somewhat rivals. So I think that was an easy nominee. But I think Kelly is like very much disposable to Jimmy, because a lot of people don't like her. She also does keep like volunteering, but anyways. And also Kelly, from my recollection, was like, I think Jimmy saw her very much pro Keanu, so she thought, oh wait, okay, no, sorry, I lost my train of thought. But if I'm remembering correctly, part of it was that Jimmy does know that Kelly has the power, and I think he didn't want to risk her like using that to save Keanu. So she's on the block. If she uses the power, it'll be for herself, not to save Keanu. Like that'll reduce his chances. She would save Keanu potentially. So then, which I think is smart in that regard. But on Friday, Keanu and Rachel had a conversation. He lies about having a power. Rachel can tell that he's lying. Kelly tells Will and Riley about her power. Keanu tells Vinny about his power. He also already told Kelly he had one. Okay, so basically a lot of talks about the powers on Friday, post-noms and stuff. On Saturday, the veto is played, and in the veto draw, Keanu announces that he like activates his power, so only one additional name is drawn because Keanu has somebody playing in his place. So basically, or not in his place, but in addition to him. And you know what's so funny is there was a lot of discussion. I had seen vaguely who had the powers, but I didn't know what the powers were. And so I kept seeing people talk about like who they thought was going to be in this competition. And for some reason, I thought they just meant like hosting, or like I didn't know that was Keanu's power. And I didn't realize that until I saw the Big Brother updates notification of who won. And I thought it was a typo, because basically it's Casey from Big Brother 20, the winner of Big Brother 20. She comes in and she plays in addition to Keanu. Also unrelated, but I loved the veto competition costumes. They were so slay. They were like dressed in like bushes. And Felicia was there. When she said the word creeper, they had to hop in their little costume across and buzz in, and whoever was the first to buzz in won or lost, etc. Oh my god, I forgot to mention. Sorry. Okay. At the veto drawing, Keanu activates his power. Before the competition, Keanu and Jimmy kind of fight, and then Keanu threatens everybody. He's like, I'm coming after all. Like, it's so stupid. Like, genuinely so stupid. I think he's like, I'm coming after, like, each and every one of you until I'm the last one standing, which, like, yeah, that's how you play Big Brother. But, like, maybe don't say that to people. And then Ashley gets involved, and she's like, why would you say that? Which, true. Okay, this is so random. Ashley she's very funny on feeds, because she just kind of says everything. Very often, it's not helpful at all to her game, to anybody. Like, she just says whatever's on her mind. And I say all of this to say that I attended a murder mystery party once in college, and I've told this story on this podcast before because I just think it's funny. I was in my acting era. I got really into theater at the end of I've always been into theater, but I kind of gave up on like acting in high school and stuff because I joined the newspaper and I had other priorities. But I did some theater in college, and I was in my little acting era. So when my sorority, because yes, I was in a sorority, that's a story for another time. My sorority was doing like a mixer with a frat, and it was like a murder mystery party. And so when you were filling out the form, you could like select if like you wanted to be a big character. And I said yes, because we were supposed to get the packets like an hour before, or like a day before the party, and I was like, I'm gonna go in character and like but I didn't get the packet until like literally 10 minutes before the party was supposed to start, so I barely knew anything, so I wasn't super in character. And then I got drunk, and all of this to say, I was like just telling everybody everything that was in my packet, even the stuff that was like, this is a secret, you're not supposed to reveal it because it's gonna like incriminate you. I wasn't the murderer, but I was like a suspect in the murder, and I had like a secret that would then incriminate me, and I was just telling everybody the secret. Like, I was just like, look, I swear to God, I didn't, like. And all of that to say, the way Ashley plays kind of reminds me of me in that murder mystery party. Like, I was just saying anything. But anyways, that's not super relevant. She gets involved in the fight, which we didn't see on feeds because it was like immediately after the video drawing, and that feeds are down during that. But besides basically playing in the video comp are Keanu, Kelly, Adrian, Jimmy, Ava, and then the sixth person is whoever the extra person is. So Ava was picked in the random draw, and then at the veto competition that I already talked about, it was Casey. And so basically they're supposed to be hiding in the bushes, right, and like overhearing Felicia. And when she says the word creeper, they run across. Last person to buzz in is out for that round until one person's standing. So Callie is eliminated first. She's the slowest to buzz in the first time. Ava's out in the next round, and then before the third round even happens, Jimmy lets go of his button, so he's out third. Then Keanu lets go of his button, like false starts, and he's out. So it's between Casey and Adrian in the last round, and Casey wins, securing Keanu the veto. Basically, the backup nominees, like replacement noms, Amy was an easy one because she had been nominated the week before. Will was also an easy one because a lot of people like Will. So those are basically the names that are thrown around. We saw in Wednesday's episode that Mickey was really not like pro these noms because she felt like they were easy out. And like, I do agree. I understand Jimmy was in a tough position because it's like he really wanted Keanu or Kelly, and then but I don't know. Anyways, so those are basically, obviously Keanu's going to use the veto, so those are the names that are being thrown around. Rachel is obviously throughout the week pushing for Amy not to be the replacement nominee because Amy is an ally of hers. Amy really begins to kind of be like, not turn on Rachel, but she starts being like, I shouldn't have become your friend. Like, that kind of screwed me over in a way that feels really unfair and sad, and it upset me because I would argue, honestly, if you want to be mad at anybody who like got you into that predicament, I would blame Ashley. Not that I think you should necessarily blame Ashley, but it's like, yes, are people happy to get rid of you because you're a number for Rachel? Yes, but you were on people's radar. Specifically, you were on Vinny's radar because you went to bat for Ashley after the 2-hour shower debacle, not because of Rachel. Like, that ended up hurting you. But anyways, Amy's an option, obviously. If my audio changed, one of my foster kittens like literally unplugged my microphone, so I replugged it in, but like, I'm sorry about that. Anyways, okay, also, Kelly, obviously, she has this power. All the powers last until jury, if I'm remembering correctly. And so Kelly was debating before the veto competition, obviously, if she should use her power this week. She and Vinny talked it through. This was shown in the episode of Vinny's advice was like, if Keanu's on the block, he's the nominee. So unless he wins, don't use it. But when Casey won for Keanu, I think that was when Kelly decided she was going to do it. So that being said, she did play the extra competition and get the veto. Although actually, now that I'm saying that didn't happen until Monday, but I guess it doesn't totally matter the day that it happened. At some point throughout the week, Rachel and Keanu have a fight. And I don't remember what day it was, and I'm really deeply sorry. But basically, I don't know. Okay, and they showed this on Wednesday's episode. Hi, I unintentionally took a day in between the beginning of the podcast and now finishing up the podcast. So sorry if the sound is any different. I'm really sorry. I had intended to record this earlier Saturday, like to round, because I recorded the first half of the podcast Friday night. I thought that I could get the rest of it recorded somewhat early Saturday evening, to still get it out Sunday morning, but I am recording this quite late Saturday night, so even if I stay up all night editing, I do not think it will be out particularly early tomorrow, so I'm going to try to get it out before the episode goes live. Not that anybody cares. Who the fuck listens to this podcast? Literally nobody. Like, I'm putting too much pressure on it. I'm just going through my own things. I'm having a really hard time, and today really hit me hard. So all the plans for the podcast of like getting it out on time, quote unquote, the schedule that I gave myself, because again, nobody's listening to this. Who gives a fuck? But I fell behind. So anyways, life sucks. I'll be fine. Anyways, so I believe that I left off Sunday, I think is where the veto results and everything. Kelly's going to use her power, yada, yada, yada. I lost my place in my notes, so I'm really sorry because I don't remember where I was. It's fine. Everything's fine. Okay. I started talking about this yesterday, if I recall correctly, but Keanu and Rachel had a few disagreements, one which did make the episode, which I am not sure what day it happened. It's like not super relevant to like the outcome of the game because Keanu did have a veto, and Keanu had a target on his back beyond the Rachel stuff. So even if he never got into a fight with Rachel, I don't particularly think that is swaying people one way or the other. I think Keanu has a lot of people against him for a variety of reasons, but it is interesting. Like, for example, Zay, week 1, I think, again, it wasn't purely that, but I certainly don't think that him coming after Rachel helped his game, because it was bad gameplay. Like, he pitched himself horribly. It was a whole thing. Anyways, I talked about that last week, but I don't think that this impacted Keanu. Like, if Keanu hypothetically hadn't won the veto, would this be the thing that really got him sent home? No, I think that there are a lot more reasons that people are targeting Keanu, but that's just my opinion. But their relationship has been rocky. It's really interesting because in the first episode I talked about Big Brother 27, I was like, my interpretation of Rachel going to Vince and being like, don't make Keanu the replacement nominee, was because it was like, he's gonna come after people. But it was actually, like, later than I realized she did actually view Keanu as an ally. I just didn't get that because what I was getting from the feeds was Keanu didn't trust Rachel. So I was like, okay, her trying to convince Vince not to nominate, Vince, whatever his name is, to not nominate Keanu. It's not like because she cares about Keanu particularly, but because, like, that was my perception. I do think that she wanted to keep Keanu as an ally, and I think now she's just kind of like, I think the ship has sailed with Keanu and Rachel, to be quite honest. But, like, when, I don't know, even now into week 3, I feel like there's been ups and downs of them trying to get along, not getting along. I don't really like Keanu, so I don't particularly care. But anyways, I was going to say something. Oh, when Jimmy nominated Keanu this week 2, they panned to Rachel and she like smiled. Obviously this happened off feeds, but I believe that smile was about Keanu being nominated? Yes, I do. So anyways, also throughout the week, I think I mentioned this yesterday as well, but Amy, interestingly enough, begins to kind of turn on Rachel, not necessarily in a game sense or like even a friendship sense. I mean, she does say at some point to Rachel, like, if I hadn't become your friend, I wouldn't be in this position, which I think I said this yesterday, but if I didn't, I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself. I'll try to cut out stuff that I repeated because I just forgot that I said it. But I don't really think that's why Amy was in danger. Like, do I think that certainly helped people's case and like Amy's a good person to get out because she's a number for Rachel? Yes, but like that's not the only reason. You were on Vinny's radar because you defended Ashley. So if anything, blame Ashley in her 2-hour shower. It's so crazy. That feels like a million years ago. And it wasn't that long ago. Like, it wasn't that long ago objectively, but it feels like it was like a million years ago that Ashley took a 2-hour long shower. Like, who cares? I don't care. I didn't ever really care, to be quite honest. Rachel, meanwhile, throughout the week, is trying to save Amy. Amy's like, Rachel is the reason I'm in a bad spot. And meanwhile, Rachel's like really the only chance that she had. I mean, did Amy have much of a chance? I don't know. We'll get into it as the week goes on. Sorry, not to get ahead of myself. I haven't even talked about Monday yet. I guess Amy at this point, she knows she's going to be the replacement. That those are the whisperings. But anyways, okay. The veto ceremony happens. Keanu obviously takes himself. Amy is the replacement nominee. Then Kelly is like, it's not over yet. I'm going to play my thing. She wins her extra veto. She takes herself off. And then Will is the nominee. So Jimmy had to end up nominating 5 people, which sucks for him, I have to be honest. I will say, he did know that Kelly had a power. So, like, maybe he shouldn't have risked it. I understand why he did. And, like, obviously, knowing the whole trajectory of the week, Kelly would have not used her power if Keanu hadn't won the veto. So, really, it's all Casey's fault. No, I'm kidding. But not at all. How different would the season have been if he didn't have that power? Somebody else had gotten it. Or not even the season, because who knows about, like, it's too early to tell. I mean, obviously, like, things lead to small things lead to, like, the bigger things and everything. So I'm not saying it wouldn't have an impact on the season as a whole. We'll see when we get to the end. But it just how different the week would have been if Keanu didn't have that power, somebody else had that power. So then he wouldn't have won that veto. Adrian was in second place. So Adrian takes himself off. Kelly wouldn't have used her power. So then it would have been Amy, Keanu, and Kelly. Keanu would have gone home. Oh, fuck Keanu for getting that power. He ruined everything. I have to say, like, not to get into week 3 because I'm going to cover that next week. Like, still obviously so much game left to play for week 3. So, like, nothing's done yet for week 3. But even, I mean, it's not a spoiler because Keanu had the veto. But because Keanu didn't go home, and neither did Kelly. Like, both of them were safe last week, or the week 2, they were safe. In week 3, like, Morgan said at some point on feeds today, Saturday, that she's just excited for when Keanu and Kelly are both gone, because then she feels like people will actually, like, play, and it won't just be like, well, Keanu and Kelly, Keanu and Kelly, Keanu and Kelly. And I agree. Like, and that being said, maybe if a different, like, if it sucks too, because I'm like, if a different group of people won power, then, like, maybe it would shake up a bit more. Like, if Kelly won power, obviously she wouldn't target herself or Keanu, but I don't want Kelly to win power. Same with Keanu. Like, I don't want either of them to win HOH, so I'm like, I don't really know. But even, like, I mean, I also don't want him to win HOH, but Riley is, like, not going after the Keanus and Kellys. But he's going after people I'm rooting for, so I don't want Riley to. My ideal situation is Riley goes home. He's not currently an option at all, but I want him to go home. In my mind, he's an option. Anyways, sorry, where was I? Okay, so Monday, and we saw this on Wednesday's episode, Amy is the replacement nominee for Keanu, and then Will is the replacement nominee for Kelly when she wins the veto. I just went on a whole hypothetical where things would have gone little beautiful tangent, which would have been... Anyways, so basically, as of Monday, the final 3 the locked-in noms were Adrian, Will, and Amy. It really sucked for me personally. I really like Will. I enjoyed Amy. Like, neither of these people were people I was particularly happy to go home. They also weren't people that I was particularly, like, super sad if they went home. I would have been really sad if Will went home because I like Will and I think he's an interesting player and he's in an interesting position. I think, honestly, I don't know if it's just because I had a really bad day. And I'm trying not to get too, like, depressed about the way this... Like, it's very, very early on, okay? Things can change. I think I'm just, like, a little bit of the momentum I had. I feel a little deflated with the way the season's going right now, just based off of, like, the people I like and the people I was rooting for. I don't know if they're all aligned with the people that I want them to be aligned with. And, like, game-wise, I don't know if people are making the decisions that I think are best for them. But honestly, most of these feelings are around week 3, so I'll get into that next week. But, like, I don't know. It's so funny to me to talk about week 2 because I'm like, my hopes were so much higher. Anyways, but at that point, I was like, okay, there isn't a particular person I really want to go home, and there isn't a particular person that I would be like. I guess I would be marginally more devastated with with certain people, but I wasn't really like there are a few people that I've like locked in that I'm rooting for, and even if they're doing things that I don't agree with in the game, I'm rooting for them. So like I don't know, people who I'm like in my brain I've picked and I've like I'm rooting for, and then there are people who I like am unsure about or I don't really care one way or the other. And like Adrian, Will, and Amy, I didn't particularly care either way. I really like Adrian, but he's just like his position in the house, like Adrian is an interesting player to me, and I like him as like a person on TV. Like his story, I really enjoy the fact that he had Wall Comp Wednesdays. Like there's something about Adrian that does intrigue me, but I think the people he's aligned with are not necessarily like some of the people he's aligned with. I'm like, I don't give a fuck about them, and like his position in the house, I don't know. Adrian is a question mark for me. I think I would have been sad if Adrian went home, but I don't think it would like ruin the season for me or like I think it's early on enough that I feel like there are a few people who genuinely, if they go home, it will be like a punch to the gut for me. Like if Ava, which God bless, she's not even like an option for anybody right now, which I do think has made me like her more. I mean, I liked her personality, but I think somebody being well positioned in the game does make me like them more, because I like Big Brother as a game more than I like it as a show, if that makes sense. So when somebody's playing well and they're like insulated well in the game, it does make me like them more. But if Ava went home, I think I would really, really be sad. If Rachel went home, I'd be really sad. If Lauren went home, I think I'd be sad as well. There are people who I'm more invested in than others. And then there are people who I'm like, I don't want to see them go, but like I think I'd be fine either way, So that was how I felt about the 3 nominees. And Amy, honestly, I liked Amy, and I'm always rooting for like a woman to stay over a man, to be honest. The Emmy Awards is a misandrous podcast. I'm kidding. I made that joke last week. I would like to be clear. I'm not, this isn't a misandrous podcast, because I don't believe in hating people based off of like characteristics they can't change. So I don't like the idea of hating a man just because he's a man, you know what I mean? But I don't like men who aren't aware of the, patriarchy and aren't, I don't like men in terms of like the system of misogyny, not like if somebody is a man, to me, that's not, you know what I mean? So this isn't a misandrous podcast in that regard. I would just like to be clear. But in the game of Big Brother, I do tend to root more for the women than the men. That doesn't mean that I would always this is an identity politics for me, okay? I'm not gonna root for somebody because they're a woman over a man if I like the man's game better. Like, for example, Kelly, I don't give a fuck that she's a woman. I don't like her, and I'm not rooting for her at all. But anyways, all of that to say, I liked Amy, and I enjoyed her presence last week. I liked her relationship with Rachel. And honestly, like maybe this is me showing some kind of bias towards Rachel, but when Amy started turning on Rachel, it made me like Amy less. And not because I want people to be undyingly loyal to Rachel. Like it's not that at all. It was just like, and maybe I just have more perspective. Like maybe there's something about like as a viewer, I can see something that Amy can't. So like no hate to Amy because she's going off of what she thinks is the circumstances. But I think it was just annoying to me that Amy was like talking about her game as if that is the reason that like I think it just bothered me because I'm like, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true quite literally at all. Like I don't think, yes, Amy being seen as a number for Rachel made her an easy target, but I think it was also like at the end of the day, Jimmy had targets, and because of the circumstances, neither of his targets were options, and you were just disposable to him. Jimmy is aligned with Rachel. That's my cat Ernesto, if you hear him meowing in the background. Like at the end of the day, you were just disposable for Jimmy. Like, he wouldn't have preferred you went home, but, like, he just didn't, and, like, that sucks. But it's, like, it's not so, like, it feels a little bit frustrating to, like, blame her position in the house on Rachel when Rachel was pushing so hard to help Amy. It was honestly like Amy just got kind of screwed by like the circumstances because Jimmy had to nominate more people than usual and you had already been nominated, so it was an easy like nominee for him. And honestly, like Amy's the thing that really screwed her was who she was up against more than it was particularly like that anybody was targeting her. She just wasn't important enough to people's games to like risk it. Like there was a group of people who obviously wanted to keep Adrian, and there was a group of people who really wanted to keep Will. And then in the hierarchy of like who I care about, like who they cared about more, Amy just wasn't at the top of the list for many people. She had a better chance against Adrian. Like it was more split going into the live eviction. It was more split if it was Adrian and Amy. Like if Will won the blockbuster, then it was more split of like maybe Amy will stay, but anybody up against Will was probably going to go home. So that was really like just the way the cookie crumbled. Rachel really, again, I think this is what really soured me to Amy because I was like, Rachel was really pushing for Amy to stay and people just had different priorities. Like people cared more about Will than they did about Amy, and another group of people cared more about Adrian than they did about Amy. I think the group of people who cared more about Will than they did Amy also cared about Amy more than they did Adrian necessarily. So there was a bit more, like the women, for example, I think were leaning more towards like the women's side of the house, like Rachel, Morgan, that kind of group of people, Mickey, they really wanted to keep Will. But if it was between Adrian and Amy, I think more of that side of the house would have voted to keep Amy. So it was really just like the way the cookie crumbled. Like I don't know, it was interesting. But there was more up in the air if it was Adrian and Amy. So that was kind of like the scenario to look out for. That side of the house who was between Will and Amy, I think Amy started, I mean, not to like the degree of like a Kelly, but I think Amy just kind of lost her fight. Like Amy at that point was like I think she kind of saw the writing on the wall and she wasn't fighting for herself very much. So at that point I was like, honestly, I really, of the three, I was like, my best case scenario I do think is if Amy goes home. I like Adrian too, so I think I like Amy and I like Adrian and I like them somewhat an equal amount. I think honestly for me it was like, if Amy was more like vocally like I want to stay and she was fighting for herself, I think I would have been a bit more torn. But when Amy started being like, I don't know if I want to be here anymore, like I'm ready to go home, I was just kind of like, okay, then I'd rather it be Amy because Adrian seems to be more invested and he wants to stay longer and I'd rather he stay, like I'd rather him stay. But Adrian really needs to win the blockbuster because if he's up against Will, he's screwed. And if he's up against Amy, it's a little bit more close. Like Adrian really, if Adrian's on the block, the vote is a little bit more up in the air. If Will remains on the block, honestly, Will's probably staying. So it's really just about like who's going to win the blockbuster. Those are the moments that, as much as I am I'm not a hater of the BB blockbuster. I do think it adds like a level of intrigue, and I think especially for like the general audience, the casuals, if you will, as they're colloquially called. For the casuals who just watch the show, I do think it adds a lot of tension and suspense of like who's it gonna be, because you only see a snippet of like the game talks. Whereas if you keep up with the feeds, while there is a level of like, you know, lack of predictability, people sometimes assume that somebody's a shoo-in for a comp, so then they don't campaign as hard. Like there is stuff up in the air going into a live eviction, maybe more so than in the past. But I think if you're watching the feeds and you're keeping up to date with stuff like that, it's not completely as like nail biting of a situation, because they go through all the scenarios, because as of Monday, they have like the 3 scenarios it could potentially be. So they go through all of the scenarios. So while there is like still stuff up in the air, it's not as like down to the last minute as I feel like it probably feels if you're just watching the edited show, because it's like you only find out who won the veto, who the replacement nominees, and then the next day you're watching the show, it's like, oh my God, who's it going to be? Whereas if you're keeping up with the feeds, it's like, okay, as of Saturday, you vaguely know. Like, you know if noms are going to change on Saturday. I mean, most of the time. So far, you do, because people who have been on the block have won the veto. So, like, you know more of, like, what's going to happen. Like, if the person on the block won the veto, the potential renoms, like, you know more. So there's more, like, build-up of, like, the back and forth of, like, okay, these are all the scenarios. These are the people who seem to be swaying. Like, it's a little bit less... Like, you have more time to be like, okay, this is who this person is saying they're voting for. Like, you have more time to gather the data and like, go through the different scenarios, where, like, going into the blockbuster on Thursday, I was like, okay, if Adrian wins and it's Amy and Will, then, like, I had more of an idea. There was still, like, what happens if Adrian doesn't win? There is still stuff up in the air, but I guess a little bit less so if you're watching the feeds, which I personally like. But anyways, what I don't even remember where I was going. I don't even know what days I've been on. I've done a really bad job of being like, this happened Wednesday, this happened Thursday. I'm sorry. On Wednesday, this is, like, really not relevant to the game, but I had to talk about it because I did witness it. And it, like, so if you're new to Big Brother, they have-nots every week. And basically the have-nots eat slop, which is like a oatmeal-esque thing with, like, protein powder in it. And, like, all of the nutrients you're supposed to get. And so that's all you eat for a week. You sleep in an uncomfortable bed. And so there's a tradition that when it's midnight on Wednesday, like Wednesday going into Thursday, because that's when have-nots end, they will, like, have a feast and they'll do it. Anyways, they were having the have-not feast, right? Okay, Wednesday night. And Kelly comes down and she's like, people are going to compete tomorrow. Maybe you guys should quiet down. And it really pissed me the fuck off. Like, Kelly, like, I don't know anything about her. She really bothers me. I don't like her. She rubs me the wrong way. Do I think she's a funny character? Yes. Like, on TV, she's actually kind of funny because it's like I'm consuming her in increments. But watching her on feeds is really, really annoying because it's like, it's not increments. It's just, you know what I mean? Like, it's interesting to me, the people who I like on feeds, who I don't like in the show, or, like, that's always interesting to me because, like, Blue, for example, I mean, not that I disliked Blue on the show, but it's just interesting to me, the people who I like more, the more that I learn about them. Like, I feel like I would have liked Blue less if I didn't see her on the feeds, but and don't get me wrong, Blue pissed me off game-wise. Blue from Big Brother 25. Like, game-wise, I had my issues with Blue, okay? But, I enjoyed watching her. I think the more that I feel like if I just saw Blue in an edited show, I wouldn't like her as much as I did because I watched her on feeds, if that makes sense. Whereas Kelly, I feel like if I was just watching the edited show, I wouldn't dislike her as much, but she just really gets on my nerves. She really gets on my nerves. I'm really sorry to Kelly. I am praying for your downfall in the game of Big Brother. I wish you all the best in the outside world. But okay, this is so random, but Kelly keeps saying, and she said this at some point in week 3, so I'll talk about it next week. Sorry that I keep jumping ahead. But she keeps talking about how she instigated all these fights. And I'm like, she just really bothers me. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry to Kelly, okay? I'm sorry to Kelly. But as of Wednesday night, interestingly enough, because I feel like for a few days there, it was kind of like, okay, if it's Amy and Adrian will go. And Amy and Will, Amy goes. Like, if Will's on the block, whoever's against him goes. But between Adrian and Amy, it was a little bit more up in the air for a little bit, with people leaning more towards evicting Adrian. And then I think it started swaying more towards Amy because of her lack of really campaigning for herself, in my opinion. Like, I think Adrian really just put his heart in it more. And I get it. I was leaning. I think I would prefer if Amy went home. I would have been sad to see Will go, especially in the circumstances. Like, I just feel like Will hadn't, like, if he had gone in week 2, like, he barely had the opportunity to play. He was, like, the last nominee. Like, he didn't want to, like, he wasn't an option at all. Like, I think that's the one thing I don't like about the BB blockbuster is the sheer amount of nominees, the sheer amount of nominations that an HOH has to do. And I think obviously they had no way of knowing that like both veto powers would be activated. But, and my sister said this, and I think it's a great point, but like maybe they shouldn't have made both, like 2 of the 3 powers like veto powers, because it's like then Jimmy had to nominate 5 people. Given they were different powers, it wasn't like you automatically get, but it's like suddenly there were like extra vetoes in play, and like that was crazy. So in that regard, I just, obviously it would have been annoying regardless. I guess it would have been one less nomination, but it's still, it's just like so many nominees that I don't like that about BB Blockbuster. And I feel like, and this was a problem last season too, and it's like I get it, it adds more drama, but it is really frustrating when it's like, by the nature of like the 3 nominees, pawns have an even greater chance of going home, because sometimes by the end of the week, it's just 2 people who were meant to be pawns left on the block. Like neither was, like both were like, you're a pawn. And in a regular season before the BB Blockbuster, whoever they were up against, they'd be fine. But because both people are pawns, you know what I mean? Like I just don't like that. And I feel like because of the 3 nominees, more than ever, not that they can hear me because they're in the house, but like if BB Blockbuster is the thing going forward, my advice, who's listening, who cares? But if you are listening to this and you go on another season of like, and you end up on Big Brother, I feel like more than ever, I mean, I feel like it's smart to like push to not be a pawn, but I think more than ever, if there are 3 nominees, you should really, really make it clear that like if you are a pawn in the scenario, in the 3 nominee situation, then you are disposable to them. Like if somebody who you are aligned with is like, you are just a pawn, if there are 3 nominees, you say to them, there is a good chance that it's 2 pawns left on the block. Only nominate people you are completely fine with going home. And if you are fine with me going home, then we are not aligned. Like, do not ever agree, and not that the people, I mean, Kelly's been like, yeah, nominate me, but like if pawns go home on regular situations of Big Brother, more than ever when there are 3 people and there are so many chances for the targets to save themselves, if you are on the block, you are disposable to the HOH, and if you are aligned with them, I would like not be okay with that. Like, that's my advice to future Big Brother players. If you listen to this podcast and you end up on Big Brother, I'm sure somebody will, okay? An Emmy Awards listener will be on Big Brother one day. Anyways, and if you were that person, do not agree to that. Do not agree to that, because in this situation more than ever, 2 pawns can end up on the block, and at that point you're just disposable. Like, Amy wasn't somebody that Jimmy was particularly targeting, but she was disposable to him. Do not let yourself be disposable, especially if it's an ally of yours. Like, that is what I would say. And it's like, even now into week 3, like, I'm like, if I was in that house right now, I would be like, do not nominate anybody that you consider a pawn. Whoever you nominate has to be somebody you're okay with going home, especially this early in the game. You have to be okay with people going home and people not liking you, and people like, if you're HOH this early in the game, you have to be okay with, you can't ride the middle, because at this point you need to make a decision, and only nominate people you're completely fine with going home. Do not nominate a pawn. Do not nominate a pawn. That's just genuinely my opinion. Like, I feel like being a pawn is already dangerous, but I feel like when there's 3 people on the block and there's like 2 chances to save yourself, it's like literally nobody in the, I guess Adrian, like nobody of the 3 final noms and nobody of the 2 final noms, because that wasn't who the HOH intended to go home. Like, just don't risk it. Do not risk it. That is my advice to anybody listening to this. If BB Blockbuster becomes a staple like the veto did, unless it's really late into the game and there are no other options, because like, God forbid, like 5 vetoes have been used or whatever, I'm being dramatic, but like, if you were aligned with the HOH, genuinely, I would be like, if you were putting me up, then you were okay with me going home, because chances are 2 pawns, quote unquote, will be on the block on eviction day. So like, that's fine. It's your HOH, but like, if you are putting me up, then we are not aligned, because I'm not a pawn. I'm disposable to you. Anyways, sorry to go on that unnecessary tangent. I don't even remember where that started, but on Thursday, okay, something I liked in Thursday's episode, we got like a segment of Lauren talking about how she's playing the middle. And I like Lauren. This made me happy because I like to see, I feel like Lauren on feeds is like more quiet and like, it's really hard to tell what she's thinking game-wise. And I enjoyed a DR from her because I enjoyed maybe getting more insight into like what she's thinking. I'll get into my thoughts on Lauren so far in week 3, but I liked this moment and that was still week 2, so I'll get into anyways. The BB Blockbuster is a puzzle and Adrian wins it. So at this point, it's like, okay, Amy's probably going home. Who's going to vote for Will? It was a unanimous vote for Amy, 13-0. She got her goodbye messages, which we didn't get goodbye messages for Zay, but who cares? I don't. Although it would have, no wait, never mind. I was about to say it would have been cool to see Amy reveal, but like Julie revealed to him that Amy was I was about to say instigator. Oh my God, the accomplice. But she got a goodbye message because she was the accomplice from the mastermind. That was funny. That was funny. I'll give them that. Everybody, like people were really sad to see her go. It was just kind of like, again, 2 people who people really liked and against other people maybe they wouldn't have been. Like, I just feel like at this point in the game, I would rather, you can't really backdoor people because there are 3 nominees. If your target saves themselves, you're going to have to get even more blood on your hands. Like, I feel like if I won an HOH early on in this format of Big Brother, just target the people you're fine with going home. Like the people that you want to go home. Maybe that's stupid. Maybe that's not strategic. Maybe it is good to have pawns. I just like thinking of it on the other side. I just feel like if you nominate people, you need to be okay with them going home. So if you're going to nominate people, maybe even lie to them. Maybe even say, yeah, Kelly, thank you. You are a pawn, but you're completely fine with Kelly going home because she pisses you off. That's fine to me. I just do not see, like, don't nominate somebody that you really, like, them going home is going to be a huge detriment to your game because chances are they will go home. Anyways, I was sad to see Amy go, but, like, I was glad Will stayed. Also, unrelated to the game, but it was so funny. Will, in his speech, he shouted out his wife and he called her his chocolate drop. And Julie Chen is like, does that mean I'm your lemon drop? That was so out of pocket. That was so crazy. She has moments where she's kind of funny. Anyways, but that was it. That was the end of, and then I say that I haven't watched, okay, maybe I haven't figured out how I'm going to do this because on Friday was the first episode of BB Unlocked. So I think maybe I'll include that in my coverage of week 3. It won't be like just anything that comes to mind. But I really, because I'm like, because when I decided that this is how I was going to format the podcast, I was like, okay, the Big Brother week ends on Thursday. So then I'll have my episodes out before the new Big Brother week starts on Sunday. But now there's a new episode on Fridays. But I guess it's like an extra thing, so I'll just talk about it briefly, if anything. Like, it's not super relevant to the game. I think it's like, from what I've seen, like just extra stuff. So if anything interesting comes from that, I'll just mention that in like the week 3, and then going forward, it will be included in my Big Brother weeks will end for Thursday. So instead of being like Sunday's episode through Thursday's episode, I'll do like Friday's episode. Anyways, I'll do BB Unlocked next week if anything interesting happens. And maybe if I'm recording after, maybe actually for next week for the week 3 recap, I'll do BB Unlocked the first episode and also the second episode. So then instead of like, maybe I can include that in my recaps. I don't really know. I haven't watched BB Unlocked. I've been watching feeds for week 3. More religiously. So I haven't watched BB Unlocked yet. I've seen like stuff, but I'll include that next week and then I'll figure out going forward how I'm going to include that. Thank you so much for tuning in. Sorry if this episode's out a little bit later than I anticipate it being. Hopefully going forward, I did the best I could. As I said in the beginning, this is a one-woman show and I have a full-time job and I'm doing the best I can. So thank you so much for tuning in. It means a lot. You'll hear from me again next Sunday. Like and subscribe if you're listening to this on YouTube. Follow me wherever you listen to podcasts if you're listening to this on another podcasting platform. My social media is linked down below if you have any comments, concerns, feedbacks, critiques, corrections if I missed something or I said something incorrectly. Thanks so much. Means a lot. Apologies for any mishaps, background noise, etc., etc. You'll hear from me next week. And as Julie Chen always says, love one another.